Hey Falcons, it is Mrs. DeShields. This week we are going to talk about perimeter. So last week we talked about area. Area being, if you're thinking about a room, area is going to measure the floor. If you're thinking about a playground, the area is going to measure the grass. But this week we're going to talk about perimeter. Okay, perimeter is going to measure the walls. It's going to measure the fence. Okay, perimeter measures the outside of a shape. Okay, area measures the inside, the floor. Perimeter measures the outside, which is the walls. Okay, so our formula, and we'll come back to it again, but our formula is simply that you add up all the sides. Okay, you're going to have to use some tricks to find all the sides, but perimeter is just adding up all the sides. Okay, adding up the walls. If you look at the blue rectangle here, if this side is 8 centimeters, knowing the properties of a rectangle, I know that this opposite side is also 8 centimeters. Okay, so this would be 8 and this would be 8. This side, they give me as 5 centimeters, knowing the properties of a triangle, of a rectangle, and knowing that the opposite sides are the same. If this is 5 centimeters, then so is this. So I would add up all of the sides, which gives me 8 plus 5 plus 8 plus 5, which equals 26 centimeters. Okay, looking at the red. One thing you're going to notice, one thing I have noticed on these slides is that some of the squares don't visually look as much like a square as I would like them to. They look a little bit more rectangular, but if it tells you the words it's a square, or if it shows you by the sides that it's a square, that all the sides are the same, then we're just going to go with that, even if it doesn't look quite like a square. So what you'll notice is sometimes when you have a square, they're only going to give you one side, because a square has the same sides for each one. So if they only give you one, that's your clue that it's going to be a square. So it'd be 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, and those multiplication magicians out there realize, ooh, I could do 4 times 4 here. Okay, that's up to you. But for perimeter, you want to add the sides together. Be careful not to get confused if you choose to use multiplication to solve that addition problem. Okay, not like area where you have the length times width. Okay, we can do the same thing with a hexagon here. It's telling me this side is 2. It didn't give me the rest of these because they're all the same. So my answer, my perimeter is not 2. I have to add all the sides. So I need to know, I need to do something else because I have to add all of these sides. I know they're all the same. So I have 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, which gives me 12 inches. Okay, so notice this note down here at the bottom. It says you still have to add the sides that aren't labeled. That's where people get tricked a lot. Okay, sometimes people get confused with area, but the other big mistake people make is if all the sides aren't labeled in the problem, people skip them, and you can't. To add the perimeter, you got to add up that whole fence or all the walls, okay, the whole outside. So I took the same shapes that we used last week for area to show you the difference in finding perimeter versus area. So when I'm finding perimeter, again, I need to make sure I'm counting the outside. And I'm going to show you a couple different ways that you could do this. Okay, so I like to physically mark my sides. Okay, we're looking, kind of like we did on a number line, we're looking at each section. Okay, so when I count them, I like to mark them off, and this is how I do it. 1, 2, and even though I already counted this box, I'm not counting the box, I'm counting the sides. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so my perimeter is 8, which is very different than my area. Okay, so again, these guys all have 2 for each square because of how it's shaped. That won't always be true. Okay, but because of how it's shaped, I'm counting each different edge of the outside. Okay, what I also recommend, and it'll be harder for me to do with my mouse here, but I would number them as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, that's not a requirement, but when you get into those bigger figures and ones that kind of go in and out, it just helps you keep track of where you have already counted. So what I also want to draw your attention to is making sure you always include those units. So just like we did with area, if it doesn't give you the units, you're going to call them units. If it tells you they're centimeters, they're going to be centimeters. If it tells you they're feet, they're going to be feet. But so always making sure that you're using the right units. Now with perimeter, it's just units. Okay, so remember with area, we had square units because we're counting the squares. Here I'm not counting the squares, so it's just going to be your straight units. Okay, so my answer, the perimeter for this first one is 8 units. Okay, so let's look at B. So for B, I always try to start in a corner so that I can keep track. This area in here is where I want you to pay some close attention. This is where people sometimes get confused. Okay, so I'm going to count each segment here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so the areas that I want you to look at is this guy right here. Notice how this one square had 1, 2, 3 different sides that are counted. Okay, this one only had 2 and this one had 3 because it has this outside edge. So that's why I mark them so I don't get confused and just count the squares. And then I also want you to pay attention in this corner. Okay, in corners is another place that people tend to skip one. Okay, maybe you'll count this one and then forget to count this one, or maybe you'll count this one and forget to count this one. So be careful in these corners because you got to get both sides. Okay, so my perimeter is 10 units because they didn't give me the units. Okay, next, so now remember when we did area for this one, it was a little bit tricky because these were halves. Not so in perimeter, right? I've got my whole length here. So I've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so be really careful. That's going to be the biggest challenge that you have, is deciding between perimeter and area. Am I adding the lengths or am I counting the squares? So just be real conscious of which one you're using. Okay, so here's one that's got lots of corners. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, my perimeter, 12 units. Okay, pretty easy, right? Okay, next. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, this one has lots of little places, excuse me, that you could forget to get. So make sure you're marking it if you can. I know on the computer that's not quite as easy. But to the extent possible, mark them. At least make sure you're coming up with a good starting point, right? If I started here, I might forget by the time I get all the way around. Did I start here? Did I start here? So always start, I usually start at the top corner right here, okay? And then I go around like a clock, just so that you know when to stop. Because if you recount one, then that's going to make your perimeter too large. Okay, last one. So again, I'm going to start up at this top corner here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So notice these last two both have a perimeter of 14 units, but they look very, very different. But if I were to build a fence around them, it would take the same amount of material to get around that same perimeter, okay, to get around that outside. So just to reiterate, our formula for perimeter is the perimeter equals the side plus the side plus the side plus the side. And I put this little asterisk, this little star here, because it depends on how many sides the shape has. So if it only has 3 sides, I would only have side plus side plus side. If it has 5 sides, I would have side plus side plus side plus side plus side. Okay, so it depends on how many sides there are, how many sides I add. Okay, and our short version of writing is P stands for perimeter, equals S plus S plus S plus S. Again, this asterisk just tells you the number of S's depends on the number of sides in the figure. Okay, so here is a word problem for you. Vicky needs to buy a fence for her carrot garden. She must determine the perimeter of her garden first. Perimeter is the total distance around the outside of a 2D shape. Okay, a 3D shape is one you can hold. 2D shape is just a flat shape on a piece of paper. To find the perimeter of this rectangular garden, we can add up the length of all the sides. The sum, the answer to the addition problem, equals the perimeter. So here it shows us our problem. 3 plus 3 plus 5 plus 5 equals 16. So the perimeter of the garden is 16 feet. Vicky will need to buy 16 feet of fence. Okay, if she only buys 15 feet, she's going to have a hole in her fence. If she buys 17 feet, she's going to have leftover. So in order to make her entire fence, she would need 16 feet. Okay, and you can see these red lines here. If we filled this, or we added boxes into this rectangle, this would just be counting those lines on the outside. Okay, so now this is going to look like what some of your practice work will look like. It tells you to find the perimeter of the shape by looking at the rectangle and then putting in the equation and finding the answer. So here I'm going to notice that my units are in centimeters. Okay, always check the units. Okay, that's part of finding perimeter and area. Because think about the difference. If I'm building a fence and I'm using centimeters, that'd be an awfully small fence, but if I'm using centimeters to make my fence and I write feet instead, that's going to be a huge difference in size, right? The centimeters are going to be small, feet are going to be much larger. So be real careful that you mark the units based on the units given. And they're not going to be to scale, which means just that if this said 4 feet, this isn't really 4 feet. So you're just using the numbers to represent that number of feet. So here, I'm going to look at my rectangle. Again, opposite sides are equal. Opposite sides are equal. And I'm going to add them up. Okay, so this is what you would do. You'd add in 4 plus 4 plus 6 plus 6, which gives you 20 centimeters. Okay, and that's what you're going to have to do. So let's look at this one. Okay, same thing. I'm going to find the perimeter of this rectangle, but this time I'm going to have to write them in full. So on the computer, you'll type them. For your paper packet, you will write them. Here, I'm going to write them for you. So this side is 5, and I know my other side is 5. Okay, for my rectangle, opposite sides are equal. So I've got this one, and I've got this one. Okay, this one is 10 inches for my rectangle. Even though I know they're the same, this one luckily has them written for both. So then this one would be 10. So if I add them up, 5 plus 5 is 10, 10 plus 10 is 20, 20 plus 10 is 30, and here I have my inches because my units are in inches. So when they give it to you, that's great. When they don't, that's where it relies on you to do your duty and find the inches. Okay, so here, what I want you to notice is that this side is 7, and this side is 7, and this side is 7, and this side is 7. So you should think, that's a square. Okay, all of the sides are the same. Now remember what I said at the beginning It doesn't exactly look like a square to me. It looks more like a rectangle. If the sides are listed as all of the same, then it's a square. Even if it doesn't look like it, it's supposed to be a square. If in the directions it says, find the perimeter of this square, even if it doesn't look like it, pretend like it's a square. Okay, so if it says it's a square, if the numbers show you that it's a square, even if it looks a little stretched out, please just pretend like it's a square. Sometimes I even put in the directions, pretend this is a perfect square. Okay, so I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened there, but pretend like it's a square. So all 4 of my sides are the same. So I would have 7 plus 7 plus 7 plus 7. Okay, and I can go through and add that. Those multiplication masters are going to think, oh, I've got 4 7s. I can multiply that out. So 4 times 7 is 28. But what you have to be careful with is not going back to area and multiplying the length and the width. 49 feet is very different than 28. So make sure you're adding them all together, and then if you're making this into a multiplication problem, that's okay. You cannot multiply the length times the width. Okay, so very quickly, here are some of the ones that are missing sides. So I've got 2 inches here, and I've got 5 inches here. Well, I don't have anything here, and I don't have anything here. Okay, so a common mistake would be 2 plus 5, 7. Well, but that's only this side. Okay, so you have to use what you know about rectangles. Opposite sides are equal. Opposite sides are equal. And fill those in. 5 and 2. Okay, 5 plus 5 is 10. 2 plus 2 is 4. 10 plus 4 is 14 inches. So here is the key to remember. You have to include all the sides. Even if they're not written in, you have to think what you need to do to find those sides. Okay, looking at the next one, I've got a 4 here and a 4 here. So your little mind should say, ooh, they're the same. So if this one's a 4, then this one's a 4. And if this one's a 4, then this one's a 4. I know that this is a square, okay? And I have 4 4s, which would give me 16 centimeters. Okay, I'm going to show you another way you could do this one. So if I have my 3 yards and my 8 yards, I could add those. 3 plus 8 equals 11. Now, am I done? Nope, because I only did this half. But because I know that I'm going to have another 3 and another 8, I could double this. So I could do my 3 plus 8 gives me 11, and then I could just double it and do 11 plus 11, which would give me 22 yards. Okay, so you could do them each individually, or you could find the 2 and then double it up. Okay, here's one that's going to come up and people are going to say, there's not enough information. But remember that there is. So if this figure only gives you the one side, that implies that all of the other sides are the same. So if I have 2 feet here, then I have 2 feet here, 2 feet here, 2 feet here, and I have a square. Okay, 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8 feet. Okay, and you're going to have pages just like this one, okay, with some different numbers on it. 7 plus 2, okay, remember it's the perimeter, it's the fence, so I want to add them up. 7 plus 2 is 14, and then I need to do 7 plus 2 again, so 14 plus 14 is 28. Now, do you need to use both strategies where you add them each individually or you double them? Nope. whichever one works best for you. Okay, I just want to show you two different ways that you could solve that. And then finally, we have 3 feet plus 9 feet plus, what would this one be? It's the opposite, so it would be 3 feet. Ooh, and 9 feet. Okay, so 3 plus 9 is 12, plus 3 is 15, plus 9 is 24 feet. Okay, so please remember that when you are doing perimeter, that you are finding the outside of the shape. You're finding the fence, you're finding the walls, okay? The area is the floor, is the grass, but the perimeter is the outside, and you're going to add those up, add up all the sides to find the perimeter. So when you think about the formula, and you have side plus side plus side, it depends on how many sides you have, how many sides you'll add. If it has 3 sides, you'll add 3 numbers. If it has 5 sides, you'll add 5 numbers. If it has 8 sides, you'll add all 8 numbers. So however many sides it has, that's how many numbers you need to make sure you have to add together. Okay, so we will end this one with a song. I apologize for you listening to me, but I want to make sure you know the tune. It is to the tune of Farmer in the Dell, which hopefully at least some of you know. And it goes like this. Perimeter is around, perimeter is around. Oh, oh, don't you know perimeter is around. You add up all the sides, you add up all the sides. Oh, oh, don't you know you add up all the sides. Okay, so hopefully you can practice that song a little bit, so when you get tripped up and you can't remember what the difference between area and perimeter is, you can think back to the song and you'll know just like that. Have a wonderful day. Use this, come back to this video if you need some more help, and contact your teachers if you have any questions. Bye, 3rd grade.